Kamal, 6 have become 5 in the Tory leadership race after MPs voted out the former Home Secretary Priti Patel.
Kemi Badenoch had been favourite, but she came second to Robert Jenrick in the MP's first ballot.
Fresh from that vote, we have Kemi Badenoch coming into the Daily Tea studio for a cuppa and to discuss why she is the person that should be the next leader of the opposition and eventually, if she can, Prime Minister.
Welcome to the Daily Tea with me, Kamal Ahmed.
And me, Camilla Tominey.
Kemi Badenoch, thank you so much for joining us. First question always in these interviews is, how do you take your tea?
I take builder's tea.
If you could choose anyone from history, alive or dead, but you can't really choose a family member because that's kind of cheating, to have a cup of tea with, who would you choose?
Oh, this is a tough question. So many different people, permutations running through my mind. Who would I have a cup of tea with?
And maybe a fondant fancy.
You've never introduced fondant fancies.
I know, it's new. I just did it wildly.
He's trying to trip me up because that just changes the people.
Yes,
now.
It does.
That changes the people. Well, it would have to be somebody who isn't around anymore. So I tell you who, and this probably does sound cheesy, but I would have a cup of tea with the late Queen, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. And the reason why is because I first became a Secretary of State in September 2022. And I'd never met her before. So I'd met pretty much everyone else in the royal family. And that was the moment when I would finally get to meet Her Majesty. But of course, you will know that she'd fallen ill. And we were then moved from an in-person swearing in a Secretary of State to an audio swearing in, which then didn't happen. And we started to get an inkling that something was going really wrong. And so I never got my moment with the Queen, and everybody else did. It feels like everybody else in Cabinet or in Parliament, certainly on the Conservative side, had their moment with Queen Elizabeth, and I didn't. So I would want to get my moment back.
Now, why is that?
Well, because of just the length of time and the generations she spanned. And it felt like she was someone who connected us to the past in a good way, to a previous age. And you felt that link with people who had gone before you. She was there, during World War II. Obviously, she was around and had seen previous monarchs, her own family members, going back to Queen Mary. And I love that aspect of history. I love that feeling that we are connected to something that came before us, and she just really embodied that. And it always felt, until the moment she passed away, that we were all connected. And I think we all started feeling as a country a little bit more adrift from the autumn of 2022.
You'll be glad to know that another person that we've interviewed on the Daily Tea, Nigel Farage, also said the Queen. So you're in good company. You must be delighted by that.
No. I don't want anyone to think that I'm aping Nigel Farage. No. I've got my own mind.
But, no, indeed. Yes, we'll get on to Nigel Farage in just a moment. As we've talked a little bit about history, let's have a little potted history of the life of Kemi Badenoch. You were born in Wimbledon, southwest London in 1980 to Nigerian parents, a GP father, like me. I don't like to talk about it. And a mother who was a professor of physiology. You grew up in the US and then in Nigeria. And then you moved to the UK, back to the UK at 16, with £100 to study for your A-levels part-time while working at McDonald's.
Yes.
After doing an engineering degree at Sussex University, you worked as a systems analyst while gaining a second degree in law from Birkbeck University. And then you eventually moved into banking, working at Coutts Bank, and then the media, later becoming digital director of The Spectator.
Yes. Great magazine. You became a member of the London Assembly in 2015 before being elected as the MP for Saffron Walden in 2017. It's now known as North West Essex.
That's right.
You were appointed Secretary of State for International Trade by Liz Truss and went on to work on the Women and Equalities and Business and Trade briefs. You've been Shadow Housing, Communities and Local Government Secretary since the election in July. You're married to Hamish and you've got 3 children, 2 girls and a boy.
Just tell us their ages.
They are nearly 5, nearly 8 and 11.
How lovely.
Oh, busy work. Busy working
so
motherhood going on
this week
over here.
has been first day of primary school and first day of secondary school for my girls. And my boy moving into year 3, which is quite sweet.
That is. Oh, so you've got a boy and a girl sandwich like I have.
Yes.
Oh, nice. So let's start with the newsy question. The leadership race, the first ballot results came in yesterday. Were you a bit upset to finish behind Robert Jenrick because you're the favourite?
No, I wasn't upset. I was actually quite pleased because I ended up exactly where I thought I would. So I'm the favourite out there with the membership, the polling outside MPs. I am the favourite. But with MPs, it is actually different. And of course, we have been going through the MP stage of the contest, and a lot of people don't necessarily recognise that. They see the polls and say everybody likes Kemi, so she must be the runaway favourite. But actually, this is a contest amongst colleagues. It's what is very weird about Parliament that's different from every other workplace. There's someone who's your boss today can sack you tomorrow. Someone who's your boss today. Someone who's your boss today, you can sack tomorrow. That's what I mean. It's very, very flat, and there's no other organisation like that where you're all peers and then you pick an individual. So we have split loyalties because everybody knows everyone else in a way that the public don't necessarily, and that's why I knew that I wasn't necessarily going to be the front runner, but I knew that I would have a good showing, which is what happened.
And are you worried about not ending up in this final two? Why do you think MPs have backed Jenrick more generously at this stage than you?
Oh, it's for one very, very clear reason. It is that he has made a definite commitment that he would leave the ECHR on day one. And I have said, well, I think we need to leave the ECHR, but we haven't got a plan. And there are other things that we need to figure out before we do that. So I'm not making a commitment on day one. I am saying that we need to lower immigration and we need to do about 100 things, of which the ECHR is one of them. So people who wanted that commitment, who are all about that one issue, have gone there, in my opinion. And I think that we need to look at where we are as a party. There's 120 of us, more or less. This is a terrible place. The public aren't listening. And I don't think we should start off our policy discussions or a policy platform where we left the last Parliament. We lost, and there are many people who will just listen to us having that conversation and think, oh, they're still in 2023, they haven't moved on. I'm really about the future. What are we going to do in future? What's Labour going to do over the next 5 years? They're not going to stop any boats. They're not going to lower immigration. Things will be worse than they are now, in my view. So let's talk about how we're going to have a wholesale plan to do that. And I think that is something that is more interesting to the general public rather than having an internal Tory party debate on exactly whether you do it on day one. Because we're not in government. We're not going to leave. We're not going to be able to do anything immediately after the leader wins.
Understand the ECHR position, but also Robert Jenrick said there should be a cap on immigration, and he's given a figure. And you don't want to do that either. On immigration, though, don't the public need to know from you, because you are going to, for the job of being leader of the opposition, the official leader of the opposition, don't the public need to know from you what is your position on immigration and the cap? So do you agree or disagree with an actual cap?
So I agree that there needs to be a cap because a cap forms part of a plan. What I'm not going to do is start making promises. What I want to do is earn trust. We had a cap before. We didn't deliver it. We made promises before. We didn't deliver them. So why should anyone trust us now? If you come out and say, well, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, why should anybody believe you? We need to earn trust. And that's why I want to talk about renewal. This is a new changed party. Evidence that, and that will win trust. I also think that I've got a very good record personally of things that I've done that can show delivery. It's not just about making promises. And I would ask people, aren't you tired of people just coming out and saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and nothing happens? We have to look at whether the people who are making these promises have actually delivered anything before, or whether they're just people who are saying what they think they need to say to get elected and then do more of the same. And that is not who I am. I am somebody who, if I say something, it's going to happen. And if I haven't quite worked out how something's going to happen, I will go and get a plan first before coming out to make a promise. And I think that's the right way around.
What kind of leader of the opposition do you want to be?
A fun leader. I think there should be a little bit more fun in terms of how we do politics. And I don't mean, everyone drinking and going to parties, but it's all got a bit sort of gloomy. And I think Keir Starmer embodies this sort of very gloomy, Roundhead, nobody is, everything's terrible. Nobody should be able to do anything. You're all bad people. And I just don't think that that's what the public want. I think people want optimism. They want, they want some sunshine. They want sunlit uplands. And that's very much my personality. People haven't been seeing it because I've been a government minister for a long time defending our position against attacks by the left. So they've seen the feisty side of me. But I think, you look at the interview that I had with Angela Rayner, for example, or not interview, sorry, the moment at the dispatch box. That was me having fun, but also telling the truth. I'm somebody who is very honest. And I said to her, this stuff isn't going to work. We've tried it. It didn't work. Here's why it didn't work. So simply coming out and thinking, oh, if you get rid of these Tories, everything will start happening, is delusional. They need to have a proper plan that is based in reality, not fantasy.
Can we ask you a direct question, because you're a direct woman? Are you rude and abrasive, as some of your critics suggest? One of the reasons why some are saying that you haven't got the support of the MPs above Jenrick is that people think that you will cross the road to start a fight. They say that's fine if you're doing it with Labour, but not if you're going to do it internally, because the last thing the Tory party needs right now is somebody who is rubbing people up the wrong way.
I think that is absolutely right. But I'm not somebody who fights with my party, and I don't like to see instability in my party. I remember last year, towards the end of the year, a lot of people were asking me to resign from the government, that what if I disagree so much with what's happening, resign, put a letter in, let's have another leadership election. And I stayed well away from that, despite a lot of the briefing and the rumours, because I thought that was something that would completely destabilise our party and make us look unserious to the public. I don't like it when we have these scraps. And what's interesting is that many of the people who were asking me to do that fell out with me because I didn't do that, and they're not supporting me now. They are actually supporting Rob. So many of the people who say to me, go out and do something, go have a fight, are the same ones who say, oh, she likes to have a fight, doesn't she? I do not cross the road to have a fight. But if there is a fight coming and you bring it to me, I'm not going to run away.
But have you got the temperament to be leader? Because it's a big caucus that you've got to keep under control.
It is. And, I would pay tribute to Conservative MPs that we do a very, very difficult job. And our job is harder than a Labour MP's job, because many policies, which are Conservative policies, which Daily Telegraph readers like, are often counterintuitive. Things like lowering tax to get more income, for example. A lot of people don't get that. A lot of people don't understand why you can't have rent controls. And, if you want to keep rents low, just make a law keeping rents low, not understanding that damages supply. And you actually have to reward landlords, for example, and help them increase supply. So we have a tough job to do. We have to do things like manage the money properly in a way that Labour doesn't really care about. And that's why they're in a bind now. There's not lots of money to spend. And that means we get attacked more. We get a lot of people saying that we're nasty, that we're vicious. Why don't we just hand out all these sweets? And we get through that. So I think that the Conservative Party has a lot of people in it who know how to deal with conflict, who know how to manage it. The vast majority of us are like that. It's only a handful of people, as we saw in the last Parliament, who create quite a lot of instability. And I think that many of us have moved on from that period. Why
do you think, Ms. Badenoch, that you are seen as a divisive figure? You have been in positions where, so you've had a continuing row with David Tennant, former Doctor Who actor, who made some rude comments about you and said that you should shut up over your arguments about gender. And you've continued it. You launched your leadership campaign by reminding people of it. You do, as Camilla said, seem to be looking for a battle. Why do people think you're divisive?
Well, I think that's a really brilliant example. There I was minding my business, doing my job, and someone goes on live TV and says, somebody who is very well known, he's much better known than I am, a wealthy celebrity, saying that he wished I didn't exist, that I should shut up. And all I have done is say, I will not shut up. And people go, ooh, that's a bit divisive. People often think that what you need to do if you're attacked is just to stay quiet and take the beating. And this is how the Conservative Party has ended up with this sort of managerialist politics that doesn't appeal to anyone. that people say things that are wrong and you don't counter it because you don't want to appear divisive. The problem is not me. The problem is the people who think standing up for yourself is divisive. How have we got to this? I'm not a punching bag. And there are actually a lot of people who believe in what I'm fighting for, who need someone speaking out for them. And if they see me getting attacked like that without defending myself, then they will feel that they can't speak up. I am doing this to protect other people. I don't really care what David Tennant is saying, but I actually found that the video itself is very amusing. And it got, if he wants to use me to get some popularity, why can't I use him to get some popularity? That video, I think it's got about 5 million views now. It's got more views than all the other candidates' teasers combined. And that's what you're going to have to do in opposition. You're going to have to just say something that gets attention, because we are not the government. And I think I can get that. But I will do it in a way that is defending the people who we believe share our values and who are often unfairly attacked by lefty lovies and others who want to see conservatism fail.
Before we get on to policies, one more question, which is, again, something that goes around in Tory and indeed Westminster bubble circles. Are you being advised by Michael Gove? Yes or no?
I am not. I am not. And I think that this is yet another example of people who don't want to move on. Mm-hmm. I am looking to the future. This man has left Parliament, but they're still talking about him. It's like he's living rent-free in their minds. And he doesn't, this is someone who was a Secretary of State of mine in 2021, and he supported me for the last leadership contest in 22. And that's it. And I often ask them, well, what is it that you've seen that makes you think that? And they say, well, I read it online somewhere. There's no evidence. I mean, do you know what it is that they've seen that looks like he's controlling?
Well, I think Nadine Dorries has been stirring a hell of a lot. She thinks that Michael Gove and others are at the centre of some centrist cabal that has controlled who goes into Downing Street for the Tories.
She's got a book to sell.
Yeah,
she's got a book to sell. If I was selling a book, I'd be saying things to get attention for it. But it shouldn't be at the expense of the party, and it shouldn't be something that is divisive for the party. If we're going to win the next election, if we're going to get this Labour government out, we need to stop attacking each other and smearing each other in this way. No one runs my campaign. People say that I'm headstrong, but how can I be so headstrong that someone is controlling me?
Yes.
They're sort of mutually exclusive.
Could I ask you about your experience? You've spoken about loyalty when you were in government to Rishi Sunak and your record, but there's been recent focus group work by More in Common saying that your lack of experience, you're the second youngest candidate, your lack of experience could be a problem for you. How can you convince, firstly, the first electorate you've got to get to win is the MPs, the second electorate is the party, and then, of course, in the end, the public are going to be your electorate that you have to convince. How do you convince them that you have the experience to be able to be the leader of the opposition and then possibly Prime Minister?
So I find the lack of experience comment very entertaining, and I know why. It's because people think I'm much younger than I am. I'm going to do an age mole here. I'm 44 3/4, so nearly 45. So I'm older than the last Prime Minister. I'm older than Suella. I'm older than Robert Jenrick. I'm older than David Cameron was when he became leader of the Conservative Party. He'd been an MP for 4 years when he became leader. I've been an MP for 7 years. I've been a Secretary of State for 2 years. David Cameron hadn't done that. I've done that. I've been a minister for 5 years. David Cameron hadn't done that, and I've done that. So people saying I don't have experience, I think, are actually saying something else. They're saying, oh, well, she looks young, so she can't possibly do it. They're not actually looking at the record. They're looking at very superficial characteristics. And I'm not going to apologize for looking young. I'm quite happy that, I've got good skin and and people think I'm younger than I am. I'm going to enjoy that. But I have been a Secretary of State for Business and Trade for 2 years. I've worked in the Treasury for 1.5 years, local government as well. But I also had quite a good career before I went into politics as well. People say that they want people who have experience of outside politics. I have done that. And I think that that's what people are looking for. But I'm also still at a stage where I can appear fresh and, looking new, youngish, and dynamic. And I think that that's something good. Why do we want, same old? Shouldn't we try something different?
So can I just ask you, headstrong, divisive, inexperienced, do you think you're facing these types of criticisms because you're a woman?
I wouldn't be surprised if there are some people who might think that. But I don't think it's very many. There will always be people, and it doesn't matter who you are, there will always be people who will try and stereotype you. It doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. If you're an old Etonian, they'll say, oh, well, you must be too posh and out of touch. You couldn't possibly understand these things. Or if you're wealthy, they'll say that. If you're a woman, they'll use the stereotypes about being a woman. If you're black, they'll use those stereotypes as well. And I get some of those too, which are quite interesting. But I think that what many people don't understand about politics is that it's just very competitive. And people will say whatever it is they can say to bring down their opponents and elevate themselves. And I'm not playing that game. I have decided that there is no point pointing out the weaknesses of other candidates. You just got to go on your strengths. Because when you point out the weaknesses of other people on your team, your opposition use it against you. If I start saying why I think I'm better than, this candidate or that candidate and point out their weaknesses, Labour will use that. And we learned that from the last leadership election, where we were criticising each other and then the clips started being played afterwards. And I don't want that. Other candidates, I'm afraid, aren't doing that, and they're quite happy to throw these things out. But I have dealt with so much. People being, death threats, people being abusive, having to fight really difficult on really difficult topics like race. Our country is not racist at a time when there was a whole cultural establishment that tried to make that the case. Same with issues about extreme gender ideology and so much more. And I'm still standing. I haven't made any mess. There's no cock-ups on my watch. There's no resignations. There's no sacking around the job. If there were resignations, it was about a point of principle. And I think that that's something that people need to look at, that I have gone through all of this fire and I'm still here. And so they have to throw out words like, oh, she's very headstrong, because they can't say she's incompetent. They can't say she's lazy. They can't say the things that people will actually be worried about. So they try and use your personality and they use your strengths against you. So if you're very tough, they say you're combative. If you know your own mind, they say you don't listen. If you're confident, it's arrogant, and so on. But I need to make sure that people see these things as strengths, because that's what the Conservative Party is going to need if it's going to get itself out of this mess. Because it's existential. We've got Reform eating our lunch, Lib Dems, Labour, Greens, everybody's coming after our vote. And if we think that we can just do the same old, and just tell people we're going to leave the ECHR and they will just come rushing back, I think that is not serious.
I was interested by your comment, and I know you have been very vocal on this, that you don't think the country is racist. And yet quite a few people have asked around this leadership race, is the membership ready for a strong black woman? Is the country ready? I would say that the membership is, because the polling seems to suggest that. You're leading the polling, particularly among Telegraph readers. But what's your reaction to that kind of rhetoric?
I think people need to stop focusing so much on race, certainly on the centre-right side of the argument. I firmly believe in a colourblind society. And I think the colour of your skin shouldn't matter any more than the colour of your eyes or the colour of your hair, and we should focus on people's character. That was what Martin Luther King talked about. And I think we got there. I think we were there late 90s, early 2000s. It doesn't mean that there's no such thing as racism. But in the same way that everybody in this country has probably experienced crime, or been a victim of crime one way or another, we are not a criminal country. And this is the nuance that I'm trying to get across. People often think that I'm making excuses for prejudice and so on. What I'm trying to say is that you can't use the actions of a minority to taint everybody else. But when it comes to Conservative Party members, nobody has been more supportive of me. Nobody has been, nobody has championed me. And I can tell you a story, for example, that really cemented this in my mind. Because the people who do this in a bad way are the left. It's Labour. They're the ones who I've experienced the most racism from. And I remember the first time I stood for Parliament in 2010 in Lambeth, which is an inner city council. I had, all my supporters were white, all the members who were helping me, delivering my leaflets, doing the work. We had a stand. And there they were championing this 28-year-old black woman. And people were shouting racists at them. And I just couldn't understand. They were all Labour Party members who just thought that that's just what you say to Conservatives. And if my being here, if my standing up as a senior member of the Conservative Party helps to destroy that myth, then I will continue to do so no matter what. I'm here to defend my party.
Sorry, that's very brief, just to make sure I understand what you've just said, is that there is racism, but the country isn't a racist country.
That's right.
That's
just
the key.
in the same way that there is crime, but this is not a criminal country. Understood. It's the same sort of analogy.
Let's just talk about a Labour attack line that was used at PMQs by Keir Starmer. He made the point that you had said back in 2022, I think, must have been during the last leadership race.
Yes, it was.
That you felt that the winter fuel allowance should be means tested. And now, of course, the Tories are attacking Labour because they want to change the winter fuel allowance. Do you regret saying that?
No, because there is a lot of nuance here. The point I was making was that I know a lot of very wealthy people, millionaires, who are getting the winter fuel allowance. This is a waste of money. And we need to have more sophisticated means testing. We use very, very rudimentary means testing. Are you on pension credit or are you not? That's not means testing. And there's still lots of people who are poor or who are short of cash, maybe asset rich, who perhaps need this assistance. But also, we as a country with net zero policies and so on have made energy more expensive. We need to, if we fix that, maybe there won't even need to be a winter fuel allowance if we can get energy prices down. So my point was about rewiring the system, that we need better ways of means testing, and we need to stop giving millionaires the winter fuel payments, not take it away from poorer pensioners. So no, I don't regret that. But I think there's a lot of nuance that gets missed out, especially when people are trying to smear you with it. This is another leadership campaign smear that's come out. We have to be able to talk about things without saying, yes, we will remove it, no, we won't. There's often quite a lot of grey in between, and I tend to operate in that space.
You said that at your launch, you said that government should do fewer things, but what it does, it should do with brilliance.
Yes.
What specific areas should government not be doing?
There is a lot of stuff which we as MPs legislate and regulate for because we are trying to please, maybe local campaign groups. The government should do this. The government should ban this, ban that. And I don't think we should be getting involved in that way. The smoking ban announcements that have been made, including the one that was made on the Conservative government, which I voted against, is a classic example. Trying to regulate people of different ages, even if they're born a few days apart. This is not a good use. This is not a good use of time. The sort of conversations people are having about ticketing. For example, Keir Starmer talking about people buying Oasis tickets. This is how we get distracted. Government should focus on things like defense of the realm. What are we doing about defense? Are we getting that right? You look at what is happening in China, China, Taiwan, Iran, and Israel. You look at, Russia, Ukraine. Let's spend most of our time focusing on the big things that people out there cannot deal with. Government should do what government should do, rather than trying to make sure that people can get cheaper Oasis tickets. That is not what government should be doing. And as it happens, people often complain about government service delivery. So if you don't like the way the government's delivering a service, why are you asking it to do more stuff? It's only going to get worse because it's the same number of people who will then have more things to do. And I think that's wrong.
We want to get onto your hinterland and do some quick-fire questions.
Okay.
And I just thought, as you mentioned Oasis, were you more of an Oasis or a Blur girl back in the day?
I think probably more Oasis, but I'm more an R&B person anyway. So,
who would you name as your favourite artist?
Oh, always from my childhood, my parents, grandparents, all of my family. It's Michael Jackson. Has always been
Pop king.
Yes, king of pop.
So
I'm an 80s girl. So
an 80s. Oh, look, I'm an 80s girl. Kamal,
maybe not so
Are you
much.
an 80s girl? Maybe not. What was the last novel that you read? And we asked novel because politicians always come out with biographies of Churchill and things, and we wanted to know what novel you last read.
The last novel I read is actually quite a while ago. It was, I've only been reading non-fiction. So it was 2 years ago, sadly. And it was A Gentleman in Moscow by Immortals. And Amazon has just done a miniseries on it, which I'm quite disappointed by because I know they'll ruin it because it was an actually very brilliant story. When you well up reading a story,
Yes.
It was one of those. So A Gentleman in Moscow.
Your human side, Kemi, maybe we can have a bit more of that. Which film have you watched more than any other?
I think there are two films I've watched more than any other. I don't know which of them more. One is Shakespeare in Love, and the other is Back to the Future.
That's my one.
And
I don't like to talk about me being on Celebrity Mastermind, but it was my specialist subject. This is a really serious question that requires a great deal of thought. Mm-hmm. What's your favourite flavour of crisps?
Ready salted, always.
Wow.
Yes.
An actual standard crisp, or are you going for a hula hoop there?
No, actual standard crisp.
Okay.
No, the one I can't have is salt and vinegar. I think it should be banned. Yes, this is
government could do that.
Yeah. But I don't think. Yes. Maybe if we're allowed to ban salt and vinegar crisps, I might become more authoritarian.
Okay, tell us something about yourself that people don't know.
I don't think many people know that I play poker and I'm quite good at it.
Oh,
wow!
Have you ever won any large amounts of cash?
Do you do it for serious cash?
No. Well, I probably wouldn't be allowed to as an MP. It would be in the papers, but I do play privately and I do well.
Well done.
I will say no more.
Would you like to have a pint with Boris Johnson or Pinot Noir with Liz Truss if you had to choose?
Ooh. This is quite tough because the thing is, I've never had a pint with Boris, but I have had Pinot Noir with Liz, and it was quite fun. So I know what it would be like. With Boris, it would be a mystery, but also I don't drink beer, so it's but maybe a pint with Boris, so I would know what that's like. But
what is your favourite tipple?
Prosecco. Yes, sorry, I know that's quite cheesy, but that is what I will go for every time.
Prosecco conservative, like a champagne socialist. What is the last song you listen to on your phone?
Dua Lipa's Training Season.
That sounds really cool.
Yes, but I have children who listen to this stuff. So
exactly.
you get young again listening to your children's music.
Kemi Badenoch, thank you very much for joining us in the Daily Tea studio. We've had a great time. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. Was your tea okay?
It was very good, thank you. Thank you so
much. Kemi
much.
Badenoch, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Blimey. She's now left the studio. She knows what she thinks, that woman. She doesn't need to there's so much conviction there, I think, just because she's not like other politicians where she's thinking carefully, what's the line? What do I need to say because I've got a stock script in my back pocket that I need to be playing a game of Tory bingo?
It slowly dawned on me listening to her as you were sort of laying out some of the things that other people say about her. Divisive, headstrong, lacking experience. That is so much of the notes of people particularly attacking women and her as a black woman. And I suddenly realised those were the kinds of things that were said about Margaret Thatcher in the 1970s. And she understands that. I also thought the answer she gave on racism, I hadn't heard her explain it in that way. When she says Britain isn't a racist country, and she gets a lot of attacks for that because lots of people deliberately mishear it as there is no racism. She said it's like Britain is not a criminal country. And I thought that was just quite interesting and opened a different type of conversation from the conversation that we have been having, which is much more divisive. She's certainly a very powerful speaker and her tone is strong. I think we discussed it, didn't we, when you went to the launch. Does she have another gear which is a bit warmer and has a bit more joy in it? And I think we slowly got there as she relaxed a bit, as people always do in these interviews. You got a bit more of the warmth. I thought it was an impressive 25, 30-minute conversation.
Also, that thing about I want to have some fun. I was not expecting that at all. I didn't think she would say that. Politicians don't really speak like that. They don't talk about having fun because they're worried it'll be written up that they're not taking the job seriously. And everything that we kind of threw at her, I mean, we felt we could be direct because her whole shtick is that she's direct. She had a pretty natural, not necessarily pre-rehearsed answer for, but she sort of was prepared. I quite like the fact that she didn't seem to take offence, really. She's just like, yeah, well, this is just who I am. And
some of the criticisms of people like James Cleverly is that they are sort of throwing out policies. I'm going to get rid of stamp duty. I'm going to reintroduce the Rwanda plan. She is saying it is not time for the Conservatives to have that type of discussion. We have to have a discussion about who we are. And I actually think that is the journey the Conservatives need to go on. So although she says she's obviously sceptical about the ECHR, she probably is pro an immigration cap, a policy I don't actually agree with, but she wants to think about it and work it through. And I think that is how the Conservatives will regain trust from the electorate.
They will, but she's got to get into the final two. So she doesn't want to play the politics necessarily that she needs to play to convince the first electorate, which is the MPs. But this is my point, and I said it earlier in the week when I went to the launch, and we've seen it here today. She's the only candidate with proper star quality. So if she doesn't end up in the final two, the membership and our readership is going to feel really robbed. So this whole like, oh, well, I'm okay with the fact that Robert Jenrick got 28 MPs and I got 22. There is, in the background, this Stop Kemi campaign going, orchestrated, no doubt, by lefties who are threatened by her Thatcherism. And it would, if she doesn't end up in the final two, I'm looking at it from two perspectives. I kind of want to see a woman in the final two. I also, people criticise me for this, sometimes I put copy before country. And regardless of how good a PM she might be, she's certainly the most interesting of all the candidates to write up and to cover as a journalist. So I want her in for that reason as well. But let's see how it pans out.
I can imagine. I think she is at the most risk in this first election, this MP's election. You can imagine some of maybe the more traditional greybeards of the Conservative Party finding it really hard to vote for her, because she is, and I don't mean this negatively, but she has got a sharp tongue. There's nothing wrong with that. I like the fact that she's so straightforward. She's very clear what she thinks. I think that's what the public likes. She doesn't mince around with her words. She's not got the word salad disease. It's very clear what she means, and she means what she says. But I think that's going to be difficult for some MPs to stomach.
Well, that is the quintet done. We never got to speak to Priti Patel. Whether we can relate that to the fact that she fell out of the race at the first hurdle remains to be seen. But that is our daily Tory series completed. You can catch up on all of those episodes on the website. You can find them all if you want to revisit Mel Stride, who has now got Melmentum. That's the word they're using on his campaign. We will be back on Monday, 5 p.m.